WN all week. There were no buses to point toward New England, and of course we watched football all weekend, waiting for a decent football game. Late on Sunday afternoon it happened, but a very, very newsworthy week here, whether it's Ozzie Newsome handing the baton to Eric DeCosta, and of course the Ravens moving on from Marty Mornhinweg and promoting Greg Roman. Dennis Koulatsos is here from Coons Florida Security Boulevard. He'll be here on Thursday from 3 until 5 talking about all of these issues, as well as the chalk holding up. 1 and 2s in both the AFC and the NFC. A big, big football week here, but we only got 3 more football games left, Den. What are we going to do, man?
Well, you know what? We're going to look forward to free agency and the combine and the NFL draft and all those great things as we're football nuts. And, of course, at WNST we cover the wide world of sports, right? Hockey and basketball and college basketball. You name it, we got it.
Well, let's start with the beginning, which is Marty Mornhinweg, which was the booing of the offense last week, and Lamar and players getting mouthy afterward. And, you know, within 3 days we found out John Harbaugh is staying. He's not going to coach the Dolphins at this point. Whatever he and Steve Bisciotti, whatever blood oath or pact they have remains between them, but John Harbaugh will be the coach of the team. And Greg Roman's going to be the offensive coordinator. So we've already had sort of the tectonic plate shift here a little bit. What do you make of all this, Den?
Yeah, it wasn't seismic by any, it wasn't a 7.0 in the Richter scale, but Mornhinweg was a little bit surprising to me because I know that how loyal John is to his assistants. I know that he and Marty go back a long, long way, worked together in the past many years ago in Philadelphia and whatnot. But, look, I think it signals that John is going to stay. I think that was the biggest message that we got with the announcement, and that they really believe that Greg Roman is the guy that's going to take this offense to the next level. Now, I still think they need to bring in some kind of a passing game guru. I think it's interesting that they said they offered that position to Marty, and then Marty declined it. So Marty obviously thinks he can land someplace else in the NFL as an offensive coordinator. But for our purposes, for the Ravens, I like the structure. I like the continuity. Wink Martindale coming back as defensive coordinator. And I think this team with some key pieces on the offense and some key signings on the defense can make the playoffs next year and make a nice deep run, particularly as Lamar Jackson continues to progress and get bigger, stronger, smarter.
I think a fun little exercise. In most years, we wouldn't have this exercise, right? Like most years, it's always felt cut and dried, right? Like, all right, so at the end of the year, what's going to happen to Arthur Jones or Paul Kruger, we knew, right? At the end of the year, what was going to happen to Koulatsos, we knew. I'm not sure about any of this, and I wasn't sure John Harbaugh was coming back, to be really honest with you, when they lost and the Dolphins and all these jobs are open and how Steve really feels about him. We went through this on your show last week about the names of these LaFleurs and Kingsburys, and none of these people would have been particularly appealing here if Bisciotti didn't get Harbaugh done and give him $50 million. But then there's actually the players and the decisions that DeCosta is going to have to make. Right now, Dennis, if I give you a $10 bill and say you got to bet it on something, where would you bet Joe Flacco lands, and what do you really think they're going to get for him? Because I think that's a start of this, right? Like, is it a 2, a 3, a 4? Is it anything? Is it a cut? Is it Jacksonville? Is it Miami, Washington, Denver? There's so many possibilities just for him. And then you go through what Suggs and Weddle and Yonda and what those decisions are going to be. And then C.J. Mosley. I mean, there's a lot going on here. I mean, big, big things are going to happen every week for the next 10 weeks here.
Yeah, I would think that Jacksonville would be the front runner to land Flacco's services, particularly if Gary Kubiak goes there. Now, he's still under contract with Denver. They have a bit of a mess over there because they announced that Gary's coming back as their offensive coordinator. Then he went to bring back Rick Dennison and a couple of other guys that they fired that the team didn't want back. So when Gary couldn't get his own assistants, he tapped out of that job. Now it looks like there's conversation with him in Jacksonville, and he's worked with Joe in the past. Jacksonville, if they feel like they're a quarterback away from winning a Super Bowl, I can see them giving up a third, a second, perhaps even a first for Joe Flacco, depending if Denver gets into the conversation. Washington certainly is there. Maybe even Miami starts talking about Joe Flacco, because we saw Nick Foles. His stock may have gone down. I mean, he threw a perfect pass to Alshon Jeffrey that went through his hands for the final interception in that game. But I think Nick Foles and Joe Flacco are going to be the two biggest names in free agency in terms of quarterbacks. College players coming up. You got Dwayne Haskins. You got the kid from Duke. So if you're an NFL GM, if you're a head coach, do you want to get an unproven rookie and stake your reputation and your welfare and your future on an unproven draft pick, or do you take the guy with a pelt on the wall and Joe Flacco that, given him a great offensive line and a solid running game and some receivers, which Jacksonville already has in place. All the pieces are there except Joe Flacco. So for me, it makes all the sense in the world that that's where Joe goes. But if Gary goes there first, I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that that's where Joe's going to end up at.
Well, and then you say, well, what will it warrant? What are they really going to get out of this? A 2 and a 6? A 3 and a 5? I don't know, but I would think they're going to get something. I mean, I heard people talking about Ravens releasing him over the weekend, and I'm like, I can't imagine, and based on what Cousins and Keenum and all of these guys have made financially, that his contract next year would not be the issue for the team picking him up. It would be whether there's legitimately a market that you are competing with 2 or 3 other teams to deal draft picks. I think the Ravens are going to wind up with getting something out of this, right?
Yeah, they should. And the fan in me wants me to see him go to Jacksonville just to see what Jalen Ramsey says. Of course, Jalen burned Joe in the GQ article, said he wasn't that good, and I'm being nice here. So for me, just for drama alone, that's where I'd like to see him land at.
I find it interesting at this point in the season, the quarterbacks we're looking at that are playing this weekend, when you're talking about Goff and Breeze and Brady and Mahomes, and you say old and new, young and old. Is Lamar Jackson in that category for you? I mean, I know you wear the jersey, and you said an unproven rookie. I don't know where we are over the next 8 months here in talking about him as being much more than an unproven throwing quarterback. Now, the pressure that you can put on the defense, and San Diego putting 7 DBs out on the field, and, didn't work out so well for San Diego or the Chargers over the week. I guess they're San Diego again now that the season's over. But I look at these other quarterbacks and I say, at what point can we believe Lamar is a franchise quarterback, not just an experiment? Because 4 other teams are going to look at Joe Flacco in the short term as a franchise quarterback.
Well, I think all we need to look at, Nestor, is the final 4 teams in this tournament: the Rams, the Saints, the Patriots, and the Chiefs. These are the top 4 scoring teams in the NFL. So much as far as defense wins championships, the top 10 defenses in the NFL from 2018 are out of the playoffs. And these teams not only have good quarterbacks, and I don't know if Jared Goff is in that conversation with Breeze, Brady, and Mahomes, but look at the pieces that they have. They have dynamic offenses. They just don't have quarterbacks. They have receivers and running backs. And the Rams are really, when you look at them, they're a smash-mouth, physical, run-first teams that feast on play action. They play good enough defense, and they have a very innovative head coach that calls the plays in Sean McVay. But they're a little bit of an outlier from the other 3 teams in that they are a smash-mouth physical team. So where does Lamar Jackson fit in? We'll find out when they get him a left guard that can move to left tackle when Ronnie Stanley misses his 4 games a year, when you get a center that doesn't get pushed back into the quarterback, when maybe they get an explosive running back, some receivers that can separate and catch the ball. So to me, it's also the pieces that they can put around Lamar because, yeah, he's not in the Mahomes category or Brady or Breeze, but maybe he can elevate and put himself in that Jared Goff category, especially with his running ability. That gives the team a whole different dimension.
Well, you look at the steps that Goff took in his second year, and you got to consider this Mahomes' first year. Although clearly Andy Reid saw something when he dealt Alex Smith off last year, right? So, and Joe Flacco might still wind up in a Redskins uniform too. Don't discount that before it's all over with. And I think that would. That would make my skin crawl a little bit. There'd be some weirdness there if he went and played for the Redskins. But this week coming up for these games and these teams, this is a nice little torch pass for the National Football League, I think, when you're considering Breeze and Brady might be together when Luke and I get to Atlanta 2 weeks from now, or it might be the young guys or one of each. But I think it's an interesting juxtaposition for the league in youth and old and new and what the league's trying to do. It's also, you get a chance for a Boston-LA Super Bowl. You got a chance to have LA in, and I don't even know what the Rams fans represent. I don't necessarily want to see the Patriots Patriots down in Atlanta, and the Chiefs haven't been in a Super Bowl in 40 years, so that makes it even more interesting. 50 years.
Well, I saw a poll that what game do fans want to see, and the first game they would like to see is the Chiefs versus the Rams or the Chiefs versus the Saints. Clearly, no one wants to see the Patriots in the Super Bowl. The fan base, the National Football League fan base in general, they want to see Chief Rams or Chief Saints, and I would agree with them. I'd like to see some new blood in the playoffs, particularly if it's the Chiefs and the Rams would have either Goff or Mahomes with a Super Bowl ring. But either way, it shapes up a terrific Final Four here.
Dennis Koulatsos is our guest. He will be here on Thursday hosting the SSV on WNST. That's from 3 until 5 p.m. Driving you home, getting you ready for the championship games here this weekend. And, of course, out of Coons Florida Security Boulevard. Tell everybody what happens at your dealership when we get 5 to 8 inches of snow. Or how many did you officially get at Security Boulevard?
We got 6.2 inches. We measured it yesterday when we were here last night before we left. But we have snow and cars and trucks, and we actually sold a few yesterday, some 4x4s. We have plow trucks available. It's a great time of the year for us because people that, you get the need buyer. There's somebody who says, look, I've got a rear-wheel drive vehicle or a front-wheel drive vehicle. I need a 4x4. We sold a couple late Saturday night to couples with young children that, you got to have a safety.
You put it off. You put it off, and you put it off till the first snowstorm, right? Literally, right?
You've got to get in Maryland. If you live in Maryland, a 4x4 it's almost a must unless you really don't have to go anywhere if you're retired or whatever. But no, we have a ton of 4x4s available. Over 300 trucks alone, just F-150s, 250s, and 350s, and that's what's selling right now. It's just anything with a 4x4, we're getting a lot of good activity on it.
Dennis, last thing here for you on the Ravens as we sort of move forward here. The veteran guys and where they are, the Mosley debate is probably going to be the biggest. Look, I mean, Suggs is either going to come back or they're going to want to pay him and have him great. Weddle, same thing. They either feel like he's an asset on the field being a coach or a liability because of speed or age or wear and tear or wherever they would be with him and his cap number. They're going to have to figure out Jimmy Smith and Brandon Carr. But I think the biggest decision the fans would notice that would feel like a mutual decision would be the C.J. Mosley situation. If you have a crystal ball, is he back or not back? Would he be more valued outside the organization or in? I guess that really is the question because we're talking about a lot of money here.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, and it all depends on how they view him, Nestor. That's what I tell fellow fans is that, look, they're on the inside, and you have to trust them. Just like when Brandon Williams got the big contract, I like the fact they signed him because, I know what happens when you can't stop the run up the middle. We saw the Ravens take full advantage of teams that couldn't stop the run between the tackles. And Brandon Williams, we kind of say, well, he got overpaid. He wasn't worth a contract until he stopped somebody on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, right? And then all of a sudden, he's worth all the money. Same thing with C.J. Mosley. All I know is that your good friend Mike Tomlin said that that's the guy the game plan for. That's the guy that makes the Ravens defense go. So when an opposing coach heaps praise on one of our players, I tend to pay attention, right, in terms of signal calling. And the guy is stout against the run, has a weakness against the pass. We know that. And the other piece is, like you said, how much is he going to be valued by somebody else? Will there be a point like Koulatsos, for example, that his value exceeds what it amounts to with the Ravens? And they also have Kenny Young and Patrick Onwuasor coming up behind him. And also Eric Weddle, he called the signals on the back end of that defense too. Does he come back? Does that also impact C.J. Mosley? Will there be a domino effect? So I guess they're sitting down right now and probably before the season ended and figured out, okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G scenarios. But I trust the organization and I trust them to do the right thing. And if they bring back C.J., I'll be happy. And if they don't bring him back, I'll still be happy because I do trust them and their process.
Well, this is where Bisciotti puts them all on an airplane, takes them down to Florida, and they sit around for 3 days and do the strategizing, right? I mean, they talk about this every year. Bisciotti will be having his press conference, no doubt, when I'm in Atlanta at the Super Bowl because I haven't asked him a question, I don't think, in 5 years. So we'll see how that goes. But, do you have questions for Bisciotti? We should be putting those questions together right now for ownership and for where they are. A lot of my questions are really about the franchise itself. Dennis, they're going to send me an invoice out in 90 days. I ate $1,500 in PSLs last year. I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, I don't think he'll have to either. I think the excitement is back. I think there's a buzz around town about this young quarterback, and he is a playmaker, right? And so we have a playmaker. We have a lot of people, besides middle-aged men like myself, wearing his jersey. There's young kids out there wearing the quarterback's jersey, and I think if they make some solid moves in the offseason, if they have a solid draft, Pittsburgh looks to be in disarray. Cleveland is rising. The Bengals are the Bengals. I think the Ravens have a legitimate shot to win the division next year and make a run in the playoffs, especially if Lamar continues to improve as we expect him to as a second-year quarterback. He makes that transition to a solid starter. Lots to be excited about from my end. Look, I'll pay my invoices, and I'll try to make every game and try to be a good fan, try to fill the seat with myself, right, and support this team to the fullest. And you never know. If they get a second or a first for Joe, that changes the draft landscape. And they have cap money to actually keep a couple of their guys and maybe even get a free agent or two that'll help in perhaps the offensive line, center, left guard, etc. I'm very excited about how they finished the season, the playoff game aside. And even with that, they never gave up. They competed well. They scored 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns. And look, Lamar went 6-1, right, in his last 7 games in the regular season. If they go 12-4, 11-5, I think that'll help the ticket prices and our investment's value.
Yeah, I'm taking notes on your little soliloquy there. 2 things you said I don't think have ever been said before. Pittsburgh in disarray, and the other thing you said is the Ravens are going to have cap space.
Yeah.
I don't think either one of those things have ever been said here in the last 10 years at all. And the Pittsburgh disarray thing, we'll see how that works itself out and where Antonio Brown winds up and how the Steelers get a draft pick back for him and all the nonsense that really began with him Facebooking Live when Mike Tomlin's in the locker room saying, don't put anything on the internet this week. Don't be stupid. And we're 3 years out on that, right? Like literally. So at some point that has to end, and Le'Veon Bell and all the knuckleheadedness that's going on up there with these human beings who are elite football players, but also not very indicative of the way the Steelers want to run their organization, right? I mean,
yeah, and the problem is now the Rooney's have gone public. To saying this doesn't work for us. He took himself off of Twitter and Instagram as a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, so they're both digging in. I don't think. Remember Santonio Holmes? He had some off-season things, off-field things, and he was dealt for a 5th-round draft pick. So if somebody picks up his $21 million a year, and I think somebody will, they'll give him away for whatever. We've seen the Steelers. That's their history in the past. They move away from people who think are locker room cancers.
Last thing for you, Den, here, I guess on this New England Patriot thing, because we've beaten around the bush here about everything, and you talk about this is changing and this team's in disarray, and the Patriots are 60 minutes away from going to a Super Bowl again. And the ease with which they make it look, the bye, the home game, sky is falling, TB12, Guerrero, Belichick hates Brady, they're done, McDaniels is going to take over, all the things that have happened there, here we go again, right?
Yeah, there's you talk about the storylines, right? People that like history, like myself, that like to see excellence, that like to see this franchise, to love him or hate him, chase a 6th Super Bowl ring for Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, right? That's the unthinkable. There's a fan base that roots for that. There's also the fan base that roots for the Chiefs, right? The young gun in Patrick Mahomes. But, here they are again, the Patriots. And, Bill Belichick and his brilliance, he used the same exact defensive plan that the Ravens used to stop the San Diego Chargers. Remember, Phillip Rivers, they kept them to field goals even on the short field. So he copied the same exact plan that Wick Martindale implemented against the Chargers. And a week later, used it to his benefit, to his advantage, to completely shut down Phillip Rivers and the offense. That alone goes to show you how smart this head coach is, this organization. Nestor, love him or hate him, cheating and all they do is win. They just win.
Well, the Patriots have known all year long that the possibility of going out to Kansas City and seeing this kid run around, they didn't know it to be without Kareem Hunt, obviously in the beginning of the year. But I have a feeling Belichick's been waiting for this one as well. Brady's been waiting for this one as well. And when you've been counted out so many times, as you and I have been in our lives, there's nothing sweeter than showing them one more time, right? Like literally. And this is where Brady's coming back one more time. That's going to be a hell of a football game. These are 2 really good football games on Sunday. I hope that they turn out to be better than the slop we had over the weekend, right, where one team was really prepared to play on 2 weeks rest and playing at home. I hope we get 2 really knuckle grabbers this Sunday. I think the fans deserve that after last weekend.
Yeah, it would be great for the brand, and as we've seen, anything can happen, right? Anything can happen, and look, it's going to be it's a great tournament, great conference championship games, and from just the NFL purists, the matchups, the intrigue, the storylines, they're all there, and now we can make the argument that the four best teams are still standing in the league, 1 through 4. Any way you rank them, any way you shake it up, I think these are the four best teams in the league.
Dennis Koulatsos will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. He's also out at Coons Ford shoveling snow and selling 4x4s and all that good stuff. Always a pleasure. We will check in with you on Thursday. If there's any breaking news, we'll make sure we get it out on the Coons Ford of Security Boulevard Tech Service. Den, take care, man. Stay warm.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure.
You got it. He'll be here on Thursday and back again on Sunday morning. You can follow him at the SSV on WNST. You can find me anytime, anywhere, out on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat and Instagram and streaming live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Mixing it up this week. A lot of Terps in here. We're going to get some Orioles in here as we get ready for spring training, as well as AFC and NFC championship games. Luke and I will be in Atlanta broadcasting all week long for Super Bowl 53 2 weeks from now and staying, hopefully, a little warmer. Hopefully there's no ice storm this time around like there was 20 years ago. Feels like 20 minutes ago. Getting old. It's all the silver and the wisdom coming in on the beard on our Facebook Live. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.